Day 857 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzie here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. So starting off, we'll take a look at those Russian losses, as currently Russia sits on more than 542,000 military personnel losses, representing an additional 1,140 in the past day. Then as for hardware losses, 7 tanks, 19 APVs and a whopping 53 artillery. Then we'll head to the map because more fires in Russia. As take for instance, a major fire has erupted in an industrial zone along the Moscow highway, accompanied by explosions. The blaze had engulfed 500 square meters of warehouse space, where authorities stated quite the commonly used reason or excuse as being due to a warehouse full of paints and varnishes burning. Then, a couple of 100 miles east of Moscow, another warehouse was on fire in the Nizhny Novgorod region. No reasons have been provided for the cause of the fire as yet, but if I have to hear one more time that it was a paints and varnish warehouse, I'm going to lose it. Then, headed further south, we saw another big bavovna in Belgorod, with an early drop-in release of a Russian aviation-launched cab munition. Quite the high failure rates these ones have, which seems to be in part due to the occasional technical failure, but other times it's due to the Russian pilots' concerns of getting too close to Ukrainian airspace. Then also overnight, it was quite the fireworks show in Russia, closer to the Ukrainian border, as there was a massive drone attack into various Russian locations including Kursk, Belgorod and Bryansk. And air defenses were even activated one step back in Oryol, Voronezh and Lipetsk. Moscow's defense ministry claimed to have destroyed 36 Ukrainian drones overnight, but did not provide details of any damage caused. Although fair to say, as we can see, there was a bit of damage, but we don't know yet exactly what was targeted. Then headed to the Ukrainian map today, and we'll start out in the west, as Belarus has highlighted its border security with Ukraine, citing increased Ukrainian drone activity. The Belarusian Ministry of Defense reported deploying additional air defense forces to protect military and civilian infrastructure in response to a surge in drone flights and air defense buildup in Ukraine's northern Zhytomyr region. Belarus also claimed the presence of the Russian Volunteer Corps, which supports Ukraine near the border, with Belarus accusing Ukraine of trying to drag them into the war, which of course most will find to be highly unlikely. Though this move could likely be another attempt by Russia to distract Ukraine's attention from other fronts using Belarus as a proxy. But so far, Belarus, a key ally of Moscow, has supported Russian aggression but not yet committed its troops directly in the war. Then we'll head into the Donbas, with Ukrainian forces making new gains and liberations as they repulsed Russian forces in the Serbryansky forest. And so this operation was carried out by soldiers of the 12th Azov Special Purpose Brigade and adds to other liberations just north of this location from about a week ago. Then headed further south as Ukrainian units attacked a Russian unit near the Donbas Canal in Chasiv Yar. Russian troops are trying to grab a foothold in this specific region for weeks now, but unable to do so. Now, sometimes Russian forces hide in the pipes or attempt to traverse through the pipes, but bear in mind these are not east-west running pipes to allow for some sort of 4D chess move of a flanking from the Russian forces, as the water pipes instead run north and south, same as the direction of the canal, which does indeed also serve as an obstruction for invading forces, having a sort of an anti-tank ditch-like effect to it. Then headed all the way down south, and probably some of the most confronting news for today, as in the direction of Yasno-Brodivka, Ukrainian positions were stormed by a detachment of female convicts from the Russian army. Now, I don't believe it to be really worth getting into the details of this case. Suffice it to say, it did not end out well for that unit. So Russia used to use a lot of these Storm Z penal battalions composed of men. However, this option has now dried up for various reasons. So now, the lengths to which Putin and the Russian MOD will desperately go to is just heinously despicable. Then, taking a look around the map into the east, a heavy FPV drone of the Ukrainian Wild Hornets unit is seen carrying an anti-tank mine, TM-62, weighing about 9.5 kilograms or about 21 pounds. The flight time was said to be about 7 minutes into enemy territory, or about 5 kilometers one way. And this one's not even the XL version. Then also we saw fighters of the Fatum unit in the 3rd Assault Brigade showed the destruction of a Mr. S self-propelled howitzer, a tank, and a number of trucks, all taken out with FPV drones. Then we saw another case of a Russian Zala drone spotted in the air by an AFU drone who effectively snuck up beside it and detonated its load. This occurrence was just south of Vovchansk in the Kharkiv sector. And I find it fascinating how interceptions like these are possible for the AFU quadcopters, which generally speaking, any quadcopter shouldn't be as fast as a fixed wing design, like that of the Zala Lancet drone. However, Ukrainian drone technology is miles ahead of its Russian counterpart in the majority of metrics. Then, also in the east, we saw a cope cage-equipped, fully loaded Russian BM-21 Grad, so a multiple launch rocket system, getting destroyed by an inbound Ukrainian FPV drone, leaving quite the catastrophic ammunition detonation in its wake. Then we'll head south, as there appears to be some word on the destruction of the Russian S-500 radar, which is part of the larger air defense battery that has been deployed in Crimea. Now, although further confirmations are required, an event like this will inevitably happen anyway. And the first rule of Ukrainian Fight Club is always go for the radars first, because it reduces the air defense battery's overall threat, which is more or less equivalent to blinding the system. But we already know that Russia's S-500 system deployed in Crimea is operating at a reduced capacity and is essentially a prototype, so a complete system that should have 4 to 6 launchers and 2 to 4 radars is different in this case, where the S-500 is likely working with a smaller configuration. And I remember about a decade ago when Russia first announced the S-500, it was meant to be a revolutionary step in air and missile defense technology, promising capabilities far beyond existing systems like the S-400, and it seemed really concerning at the time. But in this war, Russia has time and time again showed that its supposed most advanced systems are far from invincible. Plus, it's going to be a dark, dark day for Russia and Russian morale if or when it gets confirmed that their most prized air defense possession is nothing more than a paper tiger. Then, speaking of air defenses in the peninsula, Atesh partisans are at it once again, this time identifying air defense components of an S-300 or S-400 system in the Simferopol region. They happily provided coordinates and everything. And I've said it before, but this reminds me of how, from a strategic standpoint, Russia should give up the difficult-to-defend Crimean Peninsula and focus all of their efforts on the Donbas. But of course, they won't be doing this by choice, thereby continuing to stretch resources thin. Then headed across to some news for today. So Ukraine begins mass-producing long-range drones capable of striking over 1,000 kilometers into Russia, as per a statement made by Ukraine's defense industry chief. These drones will be used on military infrastructure, oil facilities, and logistics to disrupt all types of Russian military operations much farther away from the border. Now, Ukraine has already since deployed a large number of different experimental or prototype longer range drones in the past to reach as far as Tatarstan or Bashkortostan. However, this new development in reaching serial production will see some of Ukraine's most successful long-range drones act in a much more sustained and concerted effort to strike at locations far, far away from the border, deeper into Russian territory. So this is set to spice things up a bit, but truly, we won't know the make and model or the preferred design that Ukraine's first serial production has taken for these new deep strike platforms until we see some targeting action from them in the field. And by the sounds of things, this might happen soon. Then, as for a quick Russian hardware update, yet another Russian turtle tank, with all of the visual design cues taken from a more traditional rectangular tank shed, but with the lighter materials of a fence instead. However, the turret is still locked in to position. Then in some more news, the Russian coal mining sector is grappling with a dramatic 93% drop in profits, earning just 14 billion rubles or about $160 million in the first 4 months of 2024. This stark decline, reported by Russia's Federal Statistics Service, reflects a broader crisis in the industry, and over half of the Russian coal companies have become unprofitable, with the sector's total losses reaching about 58 billion rubles or about 700 million US dollars. Sanctions and the loss of Western markets have dealt a heavy blow to this crucial industry, which employs 650,000 people across 30 monotowns. Exports fell in the first quarter, with significant declines in shipments to India, Turkey, South Korea, and Japan. Even China, Russia's largest raw materials buyer, has imposed an import duty specifically on Russian coal. Although that wasn't done so by China as part of some grand gesture of geopolitical signaling to appease the West. Instead, it's to prop up their own domestic production market as part of their own protectionist measures for their own coal industry. Talk about a friendship with no limits. Then headed across to a quick funny to round it all off for today, guys. So, spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Affairs Ministry, Maria Zakharova, had said that, really as part of a Russian feel-good propaganda piece, said, quote, "Our embassies, our consulates are literally flooded with requests for visas, residence permits, or assistance in relocation to Russia." She said that people want to move to Russia to, quote, "preserve themselves as representatives and bearers of traditional values." And also that huge numbers of people under the oppression of liberal democracies are trying to resist it. So, no, just categorically false. Their embassies and consulates have not been flooded with such requests. In fact, if anything, Russian departures abroad skyrocketed since 2022. Nobody in their right mind wants to live in Russia. So that's it for today, guys. Thanks again for watching. Please continue to like and comment. I've almost hit 110,000 subscribers here, so if you're willing to, not already subscribed and just, love to watch the channel, then please hit that subscribe button as well. I really do appreciate it, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers!